You know, there's a story about the country mouse and the city mouse. It's funny because they talk about how hard it is for the country mouse, but it's really not. It's much easier to be a country mouse than it is to be a city mouse. I don't miss the city a bit. My wife and I lived down in Ann Arbor area for a few years, and the commutes, et cetera, are absolutely a pain in the ass, let's be honest. Driving in the city is a pain. But the depersonalization is a pain. Up here, you might not like it, but everybody knows you. And again, it's a good and a bad thing, but it's really a good thing. Because if something happens, everybody knows. And down there, no one knows and no one cares. Raised my son here, and I'm really glad I raised him here. He was born downstate, and we moved up here when he was in 3rd grade, and he was sure he wanted to be a city boy. First 2 or 3 years, he said, oh, we really missed it, because we were living in Lansing at the point, and he wanted to go back to Lansing. And then we went back to Lansing one time, and he saw his neighborhood and saw his house, and he went, oh, I don't want to be here anymore. I would take this over the city life any day.
And the economic cycles don't affect us very much due to the fact people are always wanting to come here anyways. So I've watched it balloon. I don't mind it. I mean, again, sometimes I get a little frustrated with people moving north and then telling me that I got to live like they did in the South. Everybody moves up here, and I always tease them. I says, I'm the only native that sits in the room, because my family founded the town, so to speak. You move north for a reason. If I want to go live in Chicago, I'll go down there and spend a weekend in Chicago and have my fill, and then I'll move back up where I belong. So, I've watched it develop. My business is directly involved in it, so, it's hard for me now to drive down the road and not be able to say, well, we did that site, we did that site, we did that site, we're on that site, we built that road, we did, we expanded that building. I've watched the sleepy little county with basically, one blinking light turn into a metropolitan mecca that people want to come to.
My senior year, 1972, was the last year of the draft. You could see America breaking because that was Vietnam. It was a pivotal time. I'm glad I lived on the other end of it. I feel sorry for you guys that didn't. They really didn't get the same look. And that changed everything. All of a sudden, there was a break. And the break's gotten worse and worse to the point now where if you're a Republican, you think Democrats are frickin' socialists. And if you're a Democrat, you think Republicans are neo-Nazis. It started in Vietnam. And again, I'm a senior learning about all that, and we're watching Vietnam daily on the news, and that's right when color's coming out, by the way, too. You don't think about that because technology has happened so fast, but the 60s are black and white days. What's that mean? You watch Lassie, and you watch Captain Kangaroo, and you watch TV, and it was in black and white. And somewhere in the 70s, color came. And it changed everything because we could graphically see Vietnam, and we could see war crimes being committed, and we could see people dying in the fields, and all of a sudden everything was not quite the same as it had been before. That part, I'm really glad I grew up before it. I feel sad for the people who grew up afterwards because they really didn't get the same look. I'm not sure that it's bad, it's just very different. I don't know as a parent nowadays whether I'd be comfortable doing it, but my parents had no problem with us jumping on a bicycle first thing in the morning in the summer and riding down to the beach, and we stayed there all day. And it was a great time to be growing up as a kid. But it really was one of those day after day, a huge play session.
It was great growing up here because you go play in the woods, You walk down the street, ride your bike to your buddy's house all the time. Once in a while, Mom would tell me I had to call when I got there, but most of the time they didn't worry or concern. Now everybody's hypersensitive, but so that was my childhood.
In 1970, my dad started the ski team. We started skiing out at Crystal Mountain as a high school team, and I became involved in that and have basically stayed involved in the ski program at Benzie ever since. The trick with that original team was, like I say, a lot of us really weren't skiers. We just wanted to try the sport out. Racing back then was not what it is today. Today, they've got computers and breakaway gates and all that other stuff. Back in those days, we used bamboo, and someone sat at the bottom of the hill and went 1, 2, three, and when the hand went down the third time, you took off, and they started timing you with a hand timer. So the racing was very, very different back then. You didn't hit gates unless you were Peter Papanow, because everything was bamboo and it hurt. And it also meant you had to reset the course as soon as you broke all the bamboo out. But it was all the same sport. And like I say, it's evolved over the last 20, 30 years. And the cool news is Benzie's been involved in it pretty much since the beginning. We've had a team early on with all the other teams. There's been 50 or 60 other teams that have started in the state since we started a Benzie Central team.
And I currently, we downhill snow ski, we cross-country ski, snowshoe, snowmobile, that's winter sports, ice fish. So yeah, that's the sports I played. And played football, which I wasn't very good because I was very small, and I wrestled. Wrestling was my passion, still is. I coach to this day. I was a state qualifier, and then I get to come home and I got to actually coach with my coach, which was kind of a cool dynamic. The old passing the torch to the young, and I still currently coach. Wrestling came natural and easy, and that's a sport where, you know, it's two guys fighting for their lives and you're the same size and figure it out. One of you is going to win. One goes home a loser, one's a winner, and that's all there is to it. Dad would build houses or wire houses. He was an electrician and a carpenter. My grandpa was a carpenter and owned an excavating business, so in the summers we would help them work. So since I've been 12, I've had a job. Since I've been 15, I've been working at Gray's Excavating. My grandpa started our business in 1939, and I got kind of forced into it years back. You had to help out, and instead of getting in trouble or running the streets, they put you to work, you know, and so I was kind of forced to help Dad, whatnot, with the carpentry, the building. Grandpa was doing excavating, but I enjoyed it, and then Grandpa, he needed some help when I was 15, and I started working with him when he needed help, and it was a lot of work. I remember complaining a lot when I was younger, but I enjoyed it. And then, you know, you did all the laboring work, the miserable stuff that Grandpa or Dad or wouldn't do or didn't want to do anymore. So they gave that to you. But eventually, being smart enough to say, like, I don't want to shovel the rest of my life, which is kind of ironic. I still shovel every day. But if I could get onto the dump truck, then I don't have to work so hard. I can drive a piece of equipment. And then, but to drive the dump truck, you got to know how to load the equipment. So Grandpa gave me a couple opportunities to prove that I wouldn't ruin something, break something, hurt myself, whatever. And I started working there, and then I'm like, well, this is a whole lot better. But it's funny, you know, there's still handwork that has to be done every single day. You get all the machine work done, which is a ton of fun, then you got the handwork. Well, if you like to work out and stay busy and active, it's not really a lot of work. It's kind of, you get paid to work out. One of my mottos is work hard, play harder. And that way you can enjoy life. So family history, I mean, my entire family lives here. We're pretty dug in, entrenched, that we're natives. My great-great-grandfather was given this land on a land grant after he fought in the Civil War, and so he homesteaded the 80 acres we're sitting on now. Lillian was my Grandpa Don's mom, and then when Grandpa Earl died, Grandpa took over, dropped out of 8th grade high school, and this school next door is where he went. He took over the farm, ran the farm, and then he married Gladys Wheelock, which her great-grandmother was Anne of Ann Lake, which makes Lake Anne. The house we're sitting in right now, you know, is my great-great-grandfather's homestead. So my family was all from around here. My dad was actually born in this house. All my families, you know, the Wheelocks to the Grays to the Heises, the Hennells, you'd have a family reunion, you just jumped in the car and went to them. Of course, your family was close by. So my paternal and maternal grandparents lived here in the area. They actually lived right by where I grew up and live now. I bought the house, the cottage next to my mom and dad. The subdivision we actually live in is called Gray's Riverdale Subdivision because Dad and Grandpa and my Uncle Ron developed it. Family history is every day.
There was a point where everybody knew everybody, and most everybody was related to everybody. And someone like me, it was great because I could kiss anybody. But a lot of people, you had to be careful who you kissed. Why? Because they might be a second or third cousin. That has been a huge cultural shift. If you grow up here, you're growing up in a very provincial neighborhood. Benzonia always had a personality. Beulah had a personality. Growing up, the Beulah-Benzonia boys and girls were quite often college prep kids. But we always considered ourselves the cool kids. Many of our parents, for whatever reason, were professionals. Not true always, but the way we looked at it, Honor, Coatmish was a redneck town. You could get beat up if you went over there. And everybody knew about Frankfurt, and that was a whole different thing. They were our enemy. Again, when you're thinking about changes, it's 1964 and something's happened at the political level of the states, and they're consolidating schools. Before that, they have all these agricultural schools everywhere. But shortly thereafter, Benzie Central forms, and Frankfurt is the only school that doesn't join. The center point of Benzie County is where the school is. It is geographically smack dab in the middle of the county. What they don't realize is it's in the middle of nowhere. Everybody's going to have to drive their entire life going to that school. And all the other schools closed and went to that one except for Frankfurt. And that started the rivalry. So for the next 70 years, the Frankfurt-Benzie rivalry has been going on, sometimes heated, sometimes kind of cooling. As a ski coach, it is 2005 or 2006, and we co-op with the Frankfurt school system. It's the first time there's a co-op there, and the football players are outraged. The basketball players like, you're co-oping with who? And again, with us, it's a perfect co-op because Frankfurt hasn't had a ski team for the last 4 or 5 years. They've got some good skiers over there, and again, they're not buying into it much either. I mean, the Frankfurt kids happen to be called Benzie skiers. And that has never really gone away. You probably notice it still, that there's still some tension between the Frankfurt, particularly that Frankfurt group of boys that's there now. But the ski team is stuck, and again, I think that will continue to. The lone exception to that rivalry, though. Like I say, if you talk football, I'm sure your dad can tell you, there's a lot of teams you need to beat, but there's one team you can't lose to, and that's Frankfurt.
Could you say one sentence that best describes Benzie County?
No.
No.
I'd have to chew on that a minute. Benzie County is kind of like a tale of two cities. It's the best of places and the worst of places. You're not going to get rich here. In fact, you're going to have trouble making a living here. But if you can figure out how to survive up here, there's no better place to be. My wife's a Yooper. She's from Marquette. And is actually a native Yooper, meaning that she can trace her family back a couple generations. And she says the same thing about the UP, which is there's a culture that you can't mimic, you can't copy, can't reproduce, and you won't find it anywhere else but there. Benzie County is the same way. There's a culture here that's non-reproducible. Things are pulling in people, but there's something about the area that's keeping them here and keeping them wanting to invest in this. That's the part that keeps me here. That's the part where I'll stay retired here versus moving somewhere else.
The best part of Benzie County is it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's safe. We don't have hurricanes or floods or fires, or we're really isolated from natural disasters. We get some snowstorms that are kind of a little bit grim, but what's the best part is it's cozy, it's safe, it's beautiful. I mean, you drive around and it's funny because we get numb to driving around and we look past the beauty very frequently. And then I'll catch myself. I'll drive, Grand Traverse Bay normally pulls me back. You start to look and start to go, wow, this is a beautiful place. You can kind of slow down and look and realize how beautiful it really is. So I don't ever see moving, so I'm entrenched. Benzie County is a wonderful place. Again, I plan on dying here.